Ladies and gentlemen, in the movies, when the bad guy gets caught and goes to prison, that's it, isn't it? Happy ending. And when the news broke last month of one of the last great snake oil salesmen finally getting what they deserve, I thought this video was a slam dunk. I thought it came wrapped like a Christmas present in the most shiny of papers. But the more I peeled off that paper and peeked into the box inside, the more I realised that that box was actually empty, except perhaps for somebody's lingering fart. You see, there is no happy ending to this story because stupid people with stupid beliefs will do stupid things, no matter how much they hurt other people or even themselves, as long as they get to feel that they have access to some sort of special knowledge. You see, in this story, we find a handful of the victims who are actually every bit as much to blame, in my opinion, as the snake oil salesman who set them on the path of self-destruction. This story will make you upset. This story will make you angry. This story will take you on a roller coaster ride. But I promise you, if you stick to the end of it, there is something we can do together that might help make this world just a little bit of a better place for some of these people. So sit yourself down, cast this to the big TV, and I'll tell you the story of the grift that just doesn't want to seem to end.
Hello, I'm Roger Blake.
Yes, this is Roger Blake, and some of you might know him as being a mechanical engineer by trade.
I'm a mechanical engineer by trade.
See? But others of you might know him for a different reason. You might recognise him as being a snake oil salesman, or simply a c***. Now, Roger was successfully prosecuted last month for charges that related to breaches of the Medicines Act. But, as I alluded to in my introduction, Roger isn't the beginning of the story. He's more like the end. So let's just wind back a bit and start the beginning. Now this is Jim Humble, and I can't think of a more ironic name because Jim is anything but humble. According to him, he's led one of the most remarkable lives in existence. You see, Jim, according to his own story, is an alien that landed upon the Earth to become a Scientologist who's got deep knowledge about a moon base on the far side of the moon. Now, that all sounds extremely crazy, I know, but at least he does believe in space, which still puts him higher on the intellectual ladder than your average flat earther. But if you think that Jim is just a harmless old man and his delusions aren't doing anybody any harm, then you really need to think again. Now, this part of the story is fairly well known and has been covered quite a number of times, so forgive me if I seem to just speed through this next little section. But basically, here's a summary of everything you need to know. Jim Humble once went on an expedition with two friends. His two friends became ill. Despite having no medical qualifications whatsoever, Jim decided in his own head that these two people must have malaria. So he gave them his water purifier to drink. They drank it. They then later recovered from the imaginary malaria that they definitely did not have. And Jim Humble put two and two together to get a box of frogs and decide that there must have been something miraculous about his water purifier. So, in the spirit of 1 2 skip a few 9900, we now find Jim Humble manufacturing a product that he calls MMS, or Miracle Mineral Supplement, sometimes referred to as Miracle Mineral Solution. And this, unfortunately, is where the hurt begins. You see, when you buy MMS, you buy two bottles. One contains a compound called sodium chlorite. Not sodium chloride, as you find in salt, but sodium chlorite. The other bottle, which is called an activator solution, really just contains an acid. And when you mix the two together, you produce a compound called chlorine dioxide. Now, chlorine dioxide is industrial bleach. And what you're looking at on the screen right now is the result of pouring activated MMS solution onto a pair of jeans.
The steel has rusted completely through, and even above it you can see that it's discoloured the steel. That was bright shiny steel when I put it in.
So if MMS does that to a pair of jeans and to a bit of steel, what is it going to do to your insides? Well, here is a picture of a normal healthy human esophagus. And here is the esophagus of somebody who was tricked into drinking MMS, and we'll get into the trickery part later on. Nevertheless, this product was marketed as some kind of wonder drug, and some corners of the alternate health community just simply couldn't seem to get enough of it, with predictable side effects.
I was nauseous the first couple days. I felt like I was going to throw up pretty much every minute. There was a lot of diarrhea. I started to have a lot of discomfort in my throat, a lot of soreness.
And then the inevitable happened, and unfortunately it happened to this man here, who had to suffer the pain of holding his dying wife in his arms 9 hours after she consumed MMS to ward off malaria. Now the fallout from that is that this man here, a Mr. Daniel Smith, an MMS distributor, was actually jailed for selling this and marketing it as a drug. And when I say distributor, you're probably not going to be surprised to hear that MMS was actually just a money-making pyramid scheme. Anyway, a few years later, Daniel Smith's followers and MMS supporters were still on side. So what happened? Why did this widely popularised unfortunate death not see the end of MMS? What happened? Well, this dickhead happened. Enter Mark Grennan. Actually, when I say that, I mean enter him into the video. You know what I mean.
You people are liars. And you're just an actor, you're a puppet. You're a puppet. Look at you. Look at me, sir. Do you know this about the FDA? Sir, you don't know what the hell you're talking about.
I do know what I'm talking about,
you
sir.
don't know. You're a scripted actor.
Have you seen
That's
these?
all you are. Enjoy yourself, buddy. Stupid son of a bitch.
Lovely, isn't he? Now, despite how he may come across on camera, Mark Grennan is actually a holy man, or at least that's how he likes to appear to his victims, his targets, his grift. But Mark Grennan knew two things. He knew that desperately ill religious people were among some of the most gullible people you will ever find, and he also knew that a church was offered a certain level of protection that perhaps a drug company wouldn't be given. So along with Jim Humble, Mark Grennan founded the Genesis 2 Church of Health and Healing. And rather than market MMS as some kind of cure-all drug, he marketed it as simply a sacrament, a ritual that the church followers participated in.
This is a sacrament.
And of course, for money, you could become a pastor in this church, and you can also distribute MMS for yourself. But remember, all along, we must never call this a drug.
Do not call it a medicine or a drug, because if you call it a medicine or a drug, the health ministry will demand a license and authority to treat people.
And this is Pastor Robert Baldwin. You can see here being a very, very good boy and staying very clearly on script. Now, I said before that some people have been tricked into drinking MMS. And that's because in a shocking side story that could be a standalone video all of its own, Robert Baldwin, together with this man here, Sam Little, an ex-British psychic, carried out so-called missionary work in Uganda, which was basically a large-scale human test on over 50,000 Ugandans, many of which unfortunately included extremely young children. Now, I don't know if we will ever know how many people were seriously hurt or died because of the actions of these two men, who were arrested, by the way. But how are we going to convince the dedicated religious followers of this church that actually this church was set up not for religious purposes, but just for the purposes of helping line the pockets of the Grennans? Well, we can check out this court document here, the United States of America versus the Grennans. Here's the case number, if you want to find it. And we can see it's dated on the 29th of June 2020. Now, at the top of page 7, we see a transcript of an interview that was carried out in February 2020. An interview in which Mark Grennan was asked why the Genesis Church was founded. And his answer was amazingly honest. In fact, he went on to say, because everything you do commercially is under the Universal Commercial Code, okay? A church is completely separate from that code, statutes and laws. That's why a priest can give wine in a church publicly and not get arrested, because it's a sacrament. And when the interviewer sought further clarification and asked, so the founding wasn't really about religion, it was in order to, in a way, legalise the use of MMS, Mark Scott Grennan replied, right, it wasn't at all religious. Now, this is where we're going to part ways for a little while with the Grennans. You see, this isn't really their story. We can see from that court case that they were eventually arrested, and I can promise you that they are now all currently in jail. But I want to focus this video on the people at the other end of the story, the people that were convinced and hooked by the myth and the mystery and the miracle, magical nature of MMS. How were those people affected, and how did they go on to affect other people? You see, at times like this, I often like to sit back and think about the great philosophers in history, and my mind is often cast back to the great quote by President George Bush. Fool me once, shame on you. You fool me, you can't get fooled again. Now, after having my team of translators decipher that, I can tell you I firmly agree with what he's saying. It basically boils down to this. He's saying, grow up and take responsibility for your own actions and stop blaming other people for your failures. Now, when I first saw this story here, my gut feeling was that that advice applied very, very much to this man, but I've certainly changed my mind on that, and I think when I look at this picture, I am looking at two victims of MMS. Leon did have his 9-day-old son taken from him, which is absolutely heartbreaking for both of them. But if you look at the reasons spelled out by Leon on his website here, he seems to be blaming not himself, but rather other people involved in some sort of illegal human trafficking that he claims is happening in the UK. But I think it's perhaps easier to believe that both Leon and his baby are victims of the MMS scam. You see, it turns out that Leon was exposed by the BBC for selling MMS as a miracle drug. And it does appear that Leon's baby was taken from him just hours after he told a BBC reporter that about 27 drops of MMS is the correct dose for a baby. Now, I will point out that this story is covered on Leon's website, along with this clip from a toxicology report here, which shows that there was no sign of bleach in the baby, which is absolutely fantastic. It is clear from Leon's website that he is aware that, based on the BBC report, local authorities did start to have concerns about the son. But it's also pointed out on the website that Leon was never officially accused or investigated for anything to do with giving MMS to babies, and nor would I ever suggest or allege that he did. I'm merely passing comment on the destructive effect that these kind of scams and irrational beliefs can have on the family unit. Perhaps just as shocking is this story here about Belfast GP Finbar McGee, who actually recommended MMS to the mother of a 3-year-old child who'd taken her daughter to the doctor for stomach cramps and hives. But for me personally, perhaps this next example is the saddest of them all. Welcome to the Chlorine Dioxide Forum. Remember, chlorine dioxide, the scientific name for MMS. Here is a great place for scientifically illiterate people to meet and just simply give each other the shittest advice that they could possibly think of. And as amusing as that might at first sound, it's actually quite heartbreaking. Now, I have looked in this thread and I've read the messages, and no, I'm not going to display them on screen right now, but what I can tell you is, from what I've read, and I didn't read every single message, there's a lot of them, but from what I've read, I haven't seen a single person offer anything that I could class as coming anywhere near some sort of common sense advice. Very, very sad indeed. But out of all the names of the people that I keep hearing who are currently not in prison that are associated with this product, there is one name that I keep hearing over and over and over again. And that name is Carrie fucking Rivera.
Hello everyone. Welcome to our MMS Autism website. I'm Carrie Rivera, the director of Autismo Dos in beautiful Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. This website is a celebration of the recoveries of 40 children from autism in 21 months using this protocol.
No, of course, that's simply not true. And if you are sensitive in any way, shape or form, you might want to skip on the next minute of this video. Now, Carrie is what I like to call, how do you say it? Fucking moron. And she believes that delivering MMS anally can cure autism in children, which obviously is not true. Now, let us remind ourselves that MMS is effectively bleach, and if you engage in the extremely dangerous practice of using it anally, it's going to destroy your mucous lining of the intestine, and you are going to be passing intestinal tissue when you go to the toilet. It sounds disgusting, and it is disgusting and highly dangerous. But Carrie is telling people that this isn't intestinal tissue. What it is parasites and worms that are essentially being driven out by the MMS, and essentially that she believes it's a good thing.
The following photos depicted actual worms that were photographed after using MMS enemas. So this is bringing us to a whole new thought on autism and the recovery of autism.
Now, I have seen these photographs. They are freely available on the internet and even on some YouTube videos, but I don't put them on mine. They are extremely graphic and they are extremely horrible. And again, all I can say is investigating Carrie could lead to a whole hour-long video just on its own, which I may very well do. But for now, it's getting towards time where we're going to wrap this up. But I did promise you at the beginning of this video that there is something we can do together to help solve this problem of MMS, and that is coming. But I did start the video to talking about this guy here, Roger Blake. Now, he was jailed last month, and at the time I thought that was a fantastic story. I didn't realize what a small cog in a big system he actually was. I didn't realize how deep that this whole story went. However, I do think it's worth just looking at his reasons, his justification for, in his mind, being able to sell this product.
Yes, MMS is a bleach. However, you shouldn't be scared of the word bleach. Oxygen is a bleach, and is a more potent bleach than chlorine dioxide.
Now, you did hear that correctly. Roger Blake is actually comparing MMS to oxygen and saying that oxygen is more dangerous than MMS. It's absolutely unbelievable. He wrote a scientific article, which is on screen right now, and I would absolutely be doing air quotes right now when I use the word scientific. And in it, his justification for the oxygen comparison can be found in this paragraph here. Now, before we start, an oxidizing agent is basically something that will rip electrons from another substance, and oxidizing agents in the body roaming freely are very dangerous. In this paragraph, he compares 3 different substances. He compares hydrogen peroxide, ozone, and chlorine dioxide, and shows that chlorine dioxide has the lowest oxidation potential of the 3, which of course it does. But this is no different to playing the game of which is the least shitty smelling turd in your bathtub. We don't want any turds in the bathtub. Just because chlorine dioxide has a lower oxidation potential than the extremely dangerous hydrogen peroxide and the extremely damaging ozone does not mean that it's safe. And what Roger Blake is trying to say here is because ozone is a molecule that consists of oxygen, therefore it must just be completely equivalent to an oxygen molecule, which is of course completely wrong. And anybody who's done any kind of science up to the age of 2 months will understand what an absolute bellend he's being with his explanation. And I think the final clip I need to show you, just to highlight the thought process, or lack thereof, that goes on inside Roger Blake's head is this little clip here. This is his response that he genuinely gives after somebody lists out to him the negative side effects of taking MMS.
Now, if that is a true measuring stick for whether MedSafe determines a product to be safe, then what do we do with chemotherapy? Not only causes nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, but hair falls out and all sorts of nasty things.
And of course it blows my mind that he's unironically claiming that he can't see a difference between the two. So what can we do to stop people selling MMS for the purpose of taking it as some kind of medication, for the purpose of consumption? Well, the first thing we've got to realise is that chlorine dioxide is a legitimate water purifier. So you will come across it being sold by camping sites and outdoor activity shops, etc., as a legitimate water purifier. The problem comes when people are selling it in a form that is also accompanied with advice on how to mix it for consumption. It's very important that we can tell the difference between the two. So here's what I did. I hit Twitter and I searched MMS and I looked at people who were promoting the product and I found some obscure online shops. I then sent those online shops a series of emails, but I made sure that I worded those emails very, very specifically. I needed to know that these shops were actually advising this product for consumption. Here's an example of an email I sent. Now, not only did I receive this incredibly irresponsible reply, but I was also bombarded with a whole host of PDFs telling me how to mix this for human consumption. Now, only and only when I was convinced that these stores were actually advising me to mix and consume this product did I Google Food Standards Agency MMS. And if you do that, you will find that this is the first link that appears, and I want you to click on it. That takes you to the Food Standards Agency website page that is dedicated solely to MMS. And if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll come across this little bit of text here about the National Food Crime Unit. Now, at the bottom of that bit of text, you can see this little link here, and when you click on it, it will take you to a page where you can report a food crime. Scroll down to the bottom and click Start. The form itself is dead simple to fill in. Don't worry if you can't fill in all the boxes, but make it very, very clear that you've come across a shop that is selling MMS and they have advised you specifically it is for consumption. Tell them that you are happy to share the emails that you have or any other PDFs that they have sent to you. And in my experience, you will receive a very encouraging reply within just a couple of hours. I've been back and forth with them over email for a number of days now, and I am extremely encouraged by what I'm hearing. Now, just to point out that if you're not in the UK or the shop's not in the UK, that's absolutely fine. Just make sure that they do ship to the UK and they will take your inquiry very, very seriously. Perhaps you could give me a follow on Twitter and let me know how you're getting on. Anyway, good luck.